We have seen how to configure a project with struts and all, right? So today we are going to see something called properties in action class, right? Now basically we have learned about Java beans, right? Now how we can actually create a bean, how to use it using use bean of special, what is that, standard action of JSP. Now here we can also create an action class which is parallel same as a Java bean, right? We have already seen that structure, like how exactly it is going to work. Now whatever action class we have said here, the model, right? The action class can have many business classes, as I said, right? Now this is the action class which I am talking about, which will actually represent the model class. And we have created one action class called so we just gave a name as action class, right? And we have done some mapping, right? Now, so before going into the parameters, right, or properties, we have something here. Now you can see that something here we are actually hard coding, right? Now in our classes, we are actually hard coding as success or failed or so on and so. Now instead of doing that, right, we can actually do something called, we have some standard constants being provided for returning the status of a method in action class. Now that is one thing. Second thing is that every model class, right, if you are defining any method in any model class, right, that should actually return some text, which is some string actually, but this is for sure, right? Now you can see here when we actually created an action, right, we are actually giving a name and a class, right? And we are not actually saying which method to call, right? If you don't actually mention that method, then execute is the one which will be called exclusively. And if you want to call any other method, you have an option of method here. We'll get back to this later when we actually go ahead, right? You can actually give the method name here in your action tag inside the package, right? Which will actually trigger that. And if you don't give, it will be exclude. Now here, instead of giving the static values, right? So you can actually use some constants being provided by struts here. Now you have an interface in struts called action. You have an action interface which is com.opensymphony.xworks2.action, right? Now this action interface contains some standard constants. Now you can see here you have something called something like, you can see some constants here, like you have success, right? So rather I would say action, right? You can see now here you have an action error, input, login, none. At each and every constant which you can see in caps are different constants being provided by the action interface. If you want to use success, you can use success, this constant. Let me use return and success here. And you can see if you just go to the tooltip of the success, you can see this will return the text called success, and you have to maintain the same text called success. Let me copy this, go back to struts and make sure that that is the same. You can see I'm maintaining same, but here instead of hard coding I'm using a predefined strut constant here. Now this is we are actually getting by implementing the action interface. Same way here you can get, in fail case we have something called error constant, right? And copy that error here, which is a string, go back to struts and just say error, right? Now if there is an return of error, it will go to failure, and if there is a return of success, it will go to the success one, right? So let's run this once again. So here I'm actually making it true, which means it will go to success. Now success will actually go to the success page, right? Now let me run this, let me rebuild the project and run this once. So let me just keep this browser open. Let me copy this and so paste it here. Now you can see this and click on submit, it will go to success page, right? Now let me replace this with false, right? So let me rebuild the project, right, and restart the server. Let's go back, and so this is my login here. Now when I click on submit, you can see login failed, right? So this login failed is something which will actually give us in here, right? Now you can see this constants which are action constants, right? Action interface constants like success and error, which is error. We are actually removing the hard coding things here, right? Which are they're getting out of hard coding, right? And this will actually give you what is the text it will return, and even this error it will give you what the text you have to use, right? In this way, you have few constants which are limited here. You can use them for action. Fine. So this is something which you can actually remove the constants. Now let's get into the next topic, which is a important one, which is the properties in action classes. Now, whenever I say properties in action classes, right, which means what I mean is the same thing which we actually meant in beans. So in Java beans, what we did, we created some variables, right? And for that variable, for those variables, we created some, we created getters and setters. So whenever we actually mapped one JSP, right? When we used to go to next JSP, and in, let's say in second JSP you are creating a Java bean, right? So whatever query string you are getting from page 1 to page 2, if the query string key is matched with the parameter or a variable name, then the value will be mapped automatically. Same thing we are going to check out here. So let me show you how we can actually attain that, right? So first we'll just start with creating parameters here. Let's say this is a method which we have created called execute, right? Now, so let me create some parameters. So let me just say private string, right? Let's say we have username. Username is a parameter, right? And let's say you have private string password. Password is one more parameter. And for these two variables, I'm going to create getter and setter. So let's go to generate getter setters, select these two, and OK. Right now you can see you have your getter setters of username and password, and this is something which is execute method you have, right? Now, so let's go to the login now. Now login is something which is my actual page. If you remember, we just created one button called submit, and on submit we used to call login 123 action, right? And this login 123 is nothing but your struts action defined, right? So in this way you can have any number of action classes. So anyways, first let's see the parameter, and then I'll show you how to create multiple actions in a package, right? Now here let me create some inputs here, which is input, I would say type as text, and here name. If you remember in our JSPs and servlets, right? Now name attribute is the one which will be taken as a query string, which will actually be considered to generate a query string, right? Name will be taken as a key, and the value which you are going to enter in this input will be a value, right? Now let's go to the action class here. Now your name of, let's say, this input text box, I'm actually taking it to get a username, and I want to map this username directly to my action class. So for that, as we have seen in our Java beans, right? Same as that, let me copy this username. You have to keep the name of the variable same as the name attribute of a mapping HTML tag, right? And let me just break here. Now let me create one more input. Let's say this is of type text, and name here again. Now this time the name here is nothing but your password. Let's go back and click on password and give a break, right? So this will actually show you that. So in my login form, I have a username and password, and I have a submit. So when I click on submit, a query string will be formed using username and password, and the values will be the one which you are actually giving up. I'm not going to change anything here. My action class is same, right? Now in my action class here, let me do something here that okay, so I'm going to use these parameters in my execute. So in previous step, what we have done, we have just created a standard Boolean object, right? Now this time let me remove this, and let's do something else. Now here, whenever we actually click on login using these two, username and password, and submit, right? It will be moving to first start XML. It will go to this action class, right? Sorry, action tag, and it will go to this action class where we haven't mentioned any method, which means it will go to execute. So even before that, what it will do is whatever query string we are getting from login.jsp to this start.xml, right, will be automatically mapped with the parameters which we have in our action class. Which means as soon as it comes to execute, we already have all the parameters being mapped. Now here what we can do, we can just map them directly. Now let's say I'm going to map it as like this. So if let's say I'm going to get username dot equals, so I'm going to check with some standard thing here. Let me just say username should be ABC. Let me just check one thing. If username is ABC, then I'm going to return success. I'm going to use this standard, else I'm going to return error. Right? Now this time things are going dynamic now, right? Now we are actually handling everything by your own. Now based on the login username we are actually checking the things here. Right? Now let us run this. Let me just rebuild the project. Right? And rebuild the project, and let me restart the server now. So let me go back to the login page here. Let me refresh this. So you can see username and password. So let me give ABC first and some password as 123. Click on submit. Now you can see this will go to success page. Now you can see here that the query string which is here, right, will map to the action class here, action tag here, right? Now it doesn't actually give us that what is the success page here. Success page is nothing but our welcome. What is the page name? It's success.jsp, right? But here you can see it is not showing success.jsp and a query string, right? Rather it will actually show us the action action name and the query string, and this will be mapped automatically to the action class, and you can see the same thing. Now let's go back again and refresh this page, and let me give some wrong username, some username and some password. Click on submit. Now you can see login failed. Right? Now you can see that this is how we can actually map things. If you remember, this is the exact thing what we have done in our Java beans, and we are going to use the same pattern even in our Springs. Right? So this pattern is something which is one of the best thing what we ever get in frameworks. And if you are looking for some native APIs of Java, then it will be a Java bean, right? Perfect. Now that is how we normally map. Now in the same way, if you want to check even the password, yes, you can do that. Now let's say I'm going to check and get password, right, dot equals let's say it's 123, right? If it is ABC and 123, then I'm going to return success, or else it's a error. So let's run this again and see how it works. So let me just go back and refresh this. Just give ABC and 123 and submit. It went to login fail. Okay, we gave password 122. Now you can see as I gave wrong password, right, it went to login failed. Let's go back and give 123 this time. So ABC here and 123 submit. Now you can see success page. Right? Now this is how we can actually map things to the direct parameters. And it is very important to give getters and setters for your action class. There are few steps. If you remember in our first class, as I mentioned, whatever properties we have to take care in Java Beans, we have to take care here. An action class must and should have a default constructor, right? Let's say if you mention any action class with some other constructor, let's say int a, right? Now this is not valid again. Now when you run this, it will actually give you an error, because action class should have a mapping constructor called default constructor, because as we are creating an object using an XML, right? Now here it doesn't know, right? If it doesn't have any default constructor, then it doesn't know what to map, right? First thing. Second thing is that each and every parameter you are actually creating, and if you want to map them directly through XML, then you should have a property pertaining to the each variable you have, getter and setter. Second step. And third step is that your action class or your model classes should be serializable. Don't worry. So in our beans, you have to mention exclusively as, sometimes you don't have to mention if you're using latest versions of Java, and if you're using old one, then you have to implement your serializable or serialization interface, so that you can actually make the class serializable. Now, why do we need to do that? Why do we need to do that is, when you are actually using the action classes in JSPs, right? Now, whenever your action class is mapped in JSP, which means JSP needs a byte buffer, which means your class, it can be action class or Java bean or any class, right? If you want to make the class to be compatible to convert into buffer, you have to make it as a serializable class. That's why we normally implement serialization. So in here, you don't have to exclusively do that, but your action class will be automatically mapped as a buffer class. That's why you can see I'm not implementing any serialization here, right? Now this is how we can actually map the things, and this is something which are properties of action classes we have in Struts. This is something which is same as the Java beans we have. Now, but the only thing is how the mapping is going on. The mapping is going on through StrutXML. Now, how it is going on JSP? JSPs have got an internal standard action called useBean, which is used to map things. But here, the struts will take care of mapping. Fine then. Now, let's move ahead and see one more step here. Now, you can see here that whenever it went to login, when we are in login and clicked on write username and password, right? And it went to my success.jsp. Now here. Now we just wrote as success, and now this is a success page. Now, so what if I want to get the username who is logged in to my success.jsp? Now how can I get that? Right? Now this is something where we have to understand something called tag library. Now let's understand something called tag library, which is a directive. If you remember, we had something called tag library directive, right? So this tag library is a directive which is used to map the third-party lib files into the current project. Now here, what I'm going to map is, I'm going to map the strut tags. So we normally have URI as, so this is a standard URI for struts, / we have struts, which is -tags. This is a standard URI, and then you will have something called prefix. Now this prefix you can give anything, but normally we give as a prefix SS. Now, why do we use this? Now what happens here is, if you are using this standard tag library of strut tags, right? Now you can see here, I will be able to access all the strut tags here. Now you can see, using my S, which is parameter I'm defining as S, right? It will give you as a prefix as S. If you just say something, let's say you are giving some apple here, which is a prefix. Now immediately if you save this page, right, immediately if you go, the prefix will be your apple. Now you can see the prefix will become /. Now you can give anything. Now this is what we have something called strut tags. We normally call them as a strut tags we have here, right? And in order to use a strut tags, right, you can see all the things whatever you can see here are called as a strut tags we have. Right? Now, how can I call them? So let's not give the complex one. Let's give S. S is something which is a standard prefix we give to access a strut. Right? Now here, as we have seen in our beans, if you remember, we have seen two properties, right? Like set property and get property. Now here you don't need set property because struts will automatically map the variables defined in action class which we are getting from a query string. Now here, how can you get the property, right? Now here you have something called property tag. In property you have something called value. Now value is nothing but, so which parameter value we are actually checking out. Now let's go back and you have to get the same name called username. I want to get the username value here. You can just give as a user value. Now this will take as a direct HTML tag. Now you can just mention here user colon and break it again. And if you want even password, you can show that. Password colon and yes, let me get the property and the value. I want to get the password value here. Let me go and paste it here. Now whenever the login is successful, it will come to the success page and we are able to map the tag library which is strut tags, and we are able to map the values here. Now you can see here, you may have one doubt. Now how does this page know that we are using this action class? The same, right? Now you can see everything is going through strut tags, right? Which means if anyone is calling login123, which means the current instance of action class is running is this class, and this class contains all the variables which we need, and the same variables we are actually mapping here, which means it will be mapped automatically. That's why this tag library will be useful in this way. Now let me run this and we'll see how it works. So let me restart the server here. So let's go back to the login page. Let me refresh this. So let me give ABC and 123 again so that the login will be successful. Click on submit. You can see here. So this is success page and you can see ABC and 123. And we are getting this username and password, right, completely with the struts tags. Now this is what we call the strut tag usage. And you can use strut tag in many ways. Now this is something where we have seen one of the strut tag called property, right? Now let me show you some other text strut tag now. So let me close whatever is not needed. Okay, fine. So now let's come back here. Now we have seen a form here, right? Now if you want to use, this is a HTML form and HTML inputs we have used, right? Now you also have some strut tags which you can use as a form and different input text boxes and buttons. Now let me show you what. Now let me just comment this out. Let's say in my login I'm actually going to define a brand new way of defining tags in a strut form. Let me see how. Now first thing ever, what we have to do, we have to actually mention the tag lib. Very important. So until you have a tag libs being mentioned, right, you can't use strut tags. So this is your standard form that I want to use URL strut tags, and then the prefix will be, let's say, S. Let me take S here. Now here, first thing what I have to get, I have to get a form. So you have S colon form. Now this is something which you can see that this is a form of my strut tag. Now in this I have to create a input text. Now input text in struts is your text field or text area. Now text area is something which you can use as a text area in HTML, right? It will internally render your HTML text area, you can see here, which means this is used to give a paragraph, right? If you want to give a text area where you want a user to enter a paragraph, then you can go for text area. Now text field is something which will give you one line text like input text. Now this one, now you can actually name it as a username. Now for this text field too, which is a strut tag, if you want to create some query string out of it, then you have to use a name attribute again. Now let me give this username attribute here. And to make it simple, let me close here itself so that will be removed, right? And then again break it. Now I want to use one more text field. Now prefix you have to use S because we gave the name as S, colon, and the tag name. Now this will actually give you complete strut tag. Right? Now here you have to mention a name. Now name, let me give password here because I want to map this for a password. Now this is a form tag, I mean, and I have two different text fields defined for username and password. And let me give one for the submit. Now submit in here is a straightforward one, which is submit here. You don't have to wait for type submit, you can directly do submit. And just mention something called value. Value is something which will show the name on the button. Now let's say this time, let me say I'm going to give as a login button. Now this is my form, brand new form which I have. I'm actually using all the strut tags I have. Now this is something which is called as a tag library using struts. So let's run this and see how it works. Now in this way you can have whatever controls or tag struts are providing, right? You can use everything and you have to follow the same pattern. First thing, import them using tag library, and then you can use them anywhere you want. Fine. So let's restart the server. So let me just go back to this page, refresh this. Now you can see. So let me just restart the browser itself so that you can see the new one. Clean and restart the server again. Let me open up Mozilla. I normally use Mozilla. You can use any browser you want because it's a HTML5 compatible. That's why I use. So let me paste it up. Right now you can see the same form of login and everything is same. You can see, right? Now let me give ABC again here and 1 2 3 again. Click on login. Right? What has happened here? So when I click on login, oh, it got stuck, it seems. Oh, very sorry, because you have to mention an action, right? So until unless you have an action, it will never understand what to do, right? For any form, you have to mention an action. So until unless you give an action, it will never know what to do, right? Now, so whenever I click on submit, I want to go to the login 1 2 3 action. Right? Now let me just rebuild the project and run it again. Okay, it is already restarted. Now let me just go ahead and refresh the page. Okay. Now let's give ABC and 1 2 3. Click on login. Now you can see everything works in a same way. Right? Now this is something which is called as a using strut tags. In this way you can actually use it in any way you want, and it contains so many controls you have, right? Checkbox, append, anything. Now this is something which comes under the usage of your struts, which is designing of your form. You can do using this. Okay? Now, so this is how we map parameters, and this is how we have done, validations and all. Right? Now, let's get into one more step here. So if you remember the image, let's go back to the same image or same picture what we have written here. Now, as I said, so here if you can see this part, which is model part. Anyways, we have seen XML. We have to see more on XML. There are many things which you can learn on XML, which is Strut XML. We'll come to that in our further classes. But let's concentrate on this model now. We have seen many things in model. We have seen parameters, auto mapping, how to access those parameters in some JSPs, right? We have seen many things. Now here, as I said, whatever logic you are writing, right, you should not write the complete logic in one action file itself. We should always create some business classes which are not action classes. They are standalone Java classes which will actually do or perform some business logics. Now here you can see if you just take an example of this action class, I'm actually validating the username and password. This is a simple business logic we are doing. And what I'm saying is you should not do indirect action class. That is something which I'm talking about. Right? Now let me just open up the project here. Now here you have a Java resources and you have struts, right? Now instead of creating direct logic in here, now let me create a separate classes here. Now this is something which is straightforward. Now let me create a package, something like com.shree. Let's say BS, which is business service classes, BSC, let's say, right? And here let me create a first class. Now here let me just say it is login or validate login business service class. Let's say login service BS. Click on finish. Right? Now here what I'm going to do, I'm going to write a method which returns string, right? Or let's say boolean, it returns boolean, and just say here validate, right? Validate login, let's say. And here I'm going to pass two parameters, which is user and string, which is password, right? And in here, if there is an exception, I'm going to return false here, and here I'm going to check. So whatever logic we just wrote here, right, I'm going to cut this and paste it here, right? Now here instead of this we are going to use user here, not equals abc, and password we are going to use this password, right? And we are not concerned about this, we'll just say true, and if there is an error we'll just say false. Simple as that. Now this is how we use. Now why I'm actually going in this way, you'll actually understand when we create multiple action classes, right? Now here, now you can just say so you can create an object of validate something called validate login PS. Let me call it as obj is equal to new this, and then just say obj dot, let's say validate user, and username is your get username and password is your get password. So once you get this, let's say I'm going to take it in a boolean. Let me just say is as status is equal to so and so, right? Now I'm going to check the status. If the status is true, right, then return success, else return some error, right? I'm not going to change anything in my StudXML. Everything is same, but what I'm doing is, now this is something which is called mapping up different business classes to a single action class, right? Now with this, what happens is a reusable component can be created. Now you can see this validate login I can use anywhere I want, right? If I am creating some other business classes, I mean action classes, right, I can use a single point of contact here, which is validate login BS, to check the user whether it is valid or not. Now you can see that as of now I've just hard coded something, but in real time you may have to get this username and password from database and validate few things, validates so many things, right? Whether the user is valid or not, everything, and then return so and so. Now you can't write the same piece of code again and again in different classes, which is action classes. That is why we create something called business classes, which we also call as a reusable components, right? Now here it is returning something, and based on return we are actually returning success or failure. Let's see how how it is working. Now let me restart the server here again. Let's go back to the same page. Let me refresh this login. Now okay, now let me give ABC here and 1 2 3 here. Click on login. Now you can see, right, the same thing, right, which means this is working fine, right? Now that is how you can actually map things, right? Your business class will actually work in this way, right? Now this is something which we call it as mapping different business service classes to an action class. So in the same way, you can create any number of business service classes, right? And you can actually map different things from your action class, right? And based on the return, uh, uh, um, the response you're getting, you can actually decide which page to move on. That is what we're actually doing. Right? Now, so this is one login which we have seen. Now let's actually extend it further. Now you can see that you have one action class being created here. Right? Now in a package you can create, as I said, any number of action classes you want. Now let me create one more action here. You can see here, if you want to create an action, again you can see you have an action tag again. Now let's say this time I'm going to give it as a simple login, let's say, right? Or you can just say some profile, any action name you want, right? And for class here, now let's say for this class, let me just create one more action class, right? So this time let me call it as login profile, some action class. Now this is going to be my action class, right? And what I'm doing in it, that's fine. Let's say I'm going to use the same parameters again here, which is, let me just copy the same things here, but it is exclusively different when it comes to action class, right? But I'm going to use the same parameters, let's say, because I'm going to use same login here, right? Now, in order to get rid of this, let me just implement this with action here. Now you have different action class itself, which is your login profile, and let's say action class is one more thing. Now let me just say success and failure JSPs are okay. In my XML I have mentioned this. So let me just go ahead and create this class for a class name here, and then the class name, let me copy this login profile and give it here, dot. And returns, let's say I'm going to take the same return and I'm going to go for same pages as such. But what I'm going to do here again, I'm going to create one more form with action as profile, but everything else I'm going to take it as same. You can see here. I just want to show you that how things work even if you create different things. Now let's say in place of success I can use something else like welcome.jsp. You can create anything you want and you can actually follow whatever you're doing in success in that way. But thing here, what you have to understand is that you can create multiple action classes as such. Right? Let me open this success. Okay, let me open this as JSP editor. Right? Now thing is, this is how you can actually create a multiple action classes. So whenever you change your start.xml, thing is you have to make sure to restart your server. That's for sure. So let me restart. Anyways, it will restart, but let's make sure we are restarting it again so that the complete start.xml will be loaded again, right? And let me just go back to login here. Let me refresh the page. Right now you can see two different logins. Now this login is for one action class, which is action class, and next one is for my login profile, let's say, right? Anyways, both are doing the same task, but you can see even in my login profile I'm using my business service. A single business service is being used in both the action classes, right? Now let's first give ABC here, and 1 2 3 here again, and log. You can see this works fine. Now you can see the action class changed. It went to profile. Let's go back here. Let me give ABC here and 1 2 3 here in different section. Click on this. Now you can see login 1 2 3. Right? Now this is how you can create any number of action tags you want in a package. Right? Now that is something which is an important. Right? Now this is how we normally play around with different things on actions and different action classes creation and multiple business service classes creation and using them across different action classes, right? And mapping different JSPs or same JSPs in a different action classes and all. Fine. So any doubts still here, guys? Fine. Fine. So I hope that is something which we have for today, right? Now try this out.